Hi everyone, welcome to today's Hinckley Forum. My name is Gabby. The Hinckley Institute of Politics is a nonpartisan institute at the University of Utah. The Hinckley provides an array of transformative experiences for students through internships, forums, and classes. Hinckley Forums seek to foster public discourse and civil debate on the most current and pressing issues, bringing in local, national, and international thought leaders. Today's forum is titled Skiing in This Economy, the Economic and Environmental Future of Utah's Favorite Pastime. We want to thank the U of U Economic Ambassadors for their leadership in organizing this event. We are excited to be joined by some great presenters today. The first one is Raylene Davis. She has directed the Ski Utah's local, national, and international marketing efforts since 1985. As Vice President of Marketing and Operations, she has been instrumental in creating partnerships and marketing programs that have increased skier visitation to Utah to over 7 million per year. Davis was the publisher of Ski Utah magazine 2012 to 2019, the founder of Ski Utah's successful fourth grade Learn to Ski and Ride program and its fourth, fifth, and sixth grade passport program. She was the co-architect of the National Learn to Ski and Snowboard Month and Bring a Friend initiatives and the designer of Ski Utah's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion initiative, Discover Winter. Davis' passions for Utah skiing and growing the sport was acknowledged when she was selected to be an Olympic torchbearer for the 2002 Olympic Winter Games, inducted into the Utah Tourism Hall of Fame in 2010. Recognized by North American Snow Sports Journalists Association with their 2014 Lifetime Achievement Award and by the Utah Ski Archives with their Sue Raymer Award in 2019 for volunteerism. Our second is Caroline Gleich, renowned professional ski mountaineer, activist, and U.S. Senate candidate. Seamlessly blends her adventurous spirits with unwavering commitment to environmental and social justice. With a trailblazing career that includes gracing the covers of premier ski magazines, submitting towering peaks such as Everest and Ka'o, and becoming the first woman to ski all lines in the Chudding Gallery in her home Wasatch Mountain Range. Caroline doesn't just climb mountains, she uses her platforms to protect both people and the planet. Rooted in Park City, Utah, Caroline's overarching goal is to inspire people to embrace an active, healthy lifestyle while passionately safeguarding the precious landscapes where outdoor enthusiasts find joy. In her journey from mountain peaks to political arena, Caroline Gleich transforms passion into action, embodying the spirit of an advocate who leads by example. Our third is Otto Lang, is a PhD candidate at the University of Utah studying snow hydrology. He studies how windblown dust alters the timing of snow melts across the Wasatch Mountains. He combines fieldwork, satellite observations, and modeling methods to better understand how dust position is changing our mountain snowpack and how such changes will impact water management and winter recreation. Our last is Dave Williams. He's the Associate Managing Director at the Utah Office of Tourism. He has overseen award-winning campaigns promoting the greatest snow on Earth in the Mighty Five national parks. Dave oversees the marketing and communication, global markets, and research teams, in addition to managing the budget. Prior to working for the state, Dave held positions in the private sector, including Director of Marketing for the Gallup Organization and Product Manager for the Lomega Corporation. A proud Utah alum, Dave earned his MBA and bachelor's degree in marketing from the University of Utah. Today's conversation will be moderated by Sarah Small, faculty member in the economics department. Before we hand it over to her, we will hear from Meredith Jenkins, one of our economics student ambassadors.
Hi, everyone. My name is Meredith Jenkins, and I'm one of the economic student ambassadors here at the University of Utah. And we are the organization who helped organize this forum. As a student group, we came up with the topic, the panelists we wanted to hear from, as well as the questions we wanted to ask. Our faculty supervisor, Professor Small, will direct today's conversation, but we will also be hearing from the student ambassadors throughout today's panel discussion. I will now turn it over to Professor Small to kick us off.
Hey, wonderful. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, panelists, for coming. So as we've kind of already alluded to, our goal here is to really contextualize Utah's ski industry with a lens on both kind of climate change, but also the local economy. So just to kick us off, I'd like to kind of just ask the panelists to talk about what makes Utah skiing so special, and your relationship with the sport. And we can keep it pretty brief so we can dive into the real meat here in a minute. But as a professional athlete, maybe let's start with Caroline.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And I was a University of Utah student myself, and I attended a lot of these Hinckley forums. So thank all of you for being here. And I had really great memories of my time here at the U. I grew up in Minnesota, and I moved here when I was 15 years old. But my whole childhood, I would come out to Utah with my family. My parents would pack up the car, and we'd do the 19 hours straight. They'd switch off, and we'd do the dawn patrol. And so coming to Utah, we'd stay with, first we'd stay in Park City, and then my aunt and uncle moved here, and we'd stay with family and go ski at Alta. And those became my favorite childhood memories. I was absolutely obsessed. Like, as a kid, I would count down the days till our Utah ski vacation, and I became obsessed with the idea of trying to become a pro skier. I didn't ski competitively, I didn't ski race, so after I moved here and started my career at the University of Utah, I would always take my spring semester off so I could ski every day from January until the summer semester started, and then I would take classes in the summer. So it's just the way that skiing is a beautiful lifelong sport. The way that you can do it with it was my grandma and my parents. We'd have 3 generations out on the slopes, and now teaching my nieces and nephews. I love that, and I love the way it brings families together, it brings people together. It's a place where, you know, when we're out there in those elements, we really find a strong sense of belonging, and there's nothing else like it.
Great,
You want to go next? Yeah.
Of course, yeah. So yeah, I had the privilege from growing up in Idaho and also being able to grow up skiing. I mainly saw skiing just as like an outlet for fun and for recreation. And then kind of going to college in Colorado, I continued skiing in the mountains there and started being introduced to kind of the realm of snow hydrology, and also thinking about not just the snow we ski on for skiing and for fun, but also what that snow actually represents in terms of water management. And so doing my PhD here in Utah, it's kind of special because it's enabled me to do a lot of skiing in the mountains for fun, but simultaneously also pursue my research in snow. And I think what makes Utah and the Wasatch Mountains really special for me is just the accessibility we have to the mountains, right? We have all these canyons and these roads where we can go right up to the top of the peaks within a few hours. And that's something that's really special and allows us to really, you know, get a firsthand sense of the snow and the changes that are happening to the snow over time.
Well, I was born in eastern Utah, and I grew up in a non-skiing family. However, my parents felt that it was important for me to learn to ski because I lived in this great state with beautiful, wonderful snow. So I learned to ski here at a resort, not a resort, in a ski area called Grizzly Ridge, which is just south of Flaming Gorge Dam. And we moved to Colorado when I was 13, and then I moved all different places, came back here to university, and I knew this was where I wanted to live and raise my family. And because I did not grow up in a skiing family, I was determined to make my family a skiing family. I have 3 sons, they're married, I have 8 grandchildren, and with the exception of 2 grandchildren who just turned 2, all of them ski, including my 1 2-year-old. So 2 to 9 years old, they all ski. We love it. For me, the thing that makes Utah so special is the snow. It really is the greatest snow on earth. I mean, last year we received 903 inches of that great, light, fluffy powder. This year, not quite so much, but you know what? Mother Nature gave us 2 seasons worth last season, so we can't complain too much. But it's the snow and the access that really keeps me here and keeps my family skiing.
So my mom was a skier growing up. My dad, I don't think ever skied a day in his life. And when I turned 12, my mom enrolled me in the Davis County Ski School. I grew up in Bountiful. And so she dropped me off at the high school at like 7 in the morning. We'd take the bus up to Alta, ski all day. We'd never stop for lunch. We'd buy like a candy bar and keep going. And we'd get a lesson in the afternoon and keep skiing until the resort closed. And then we'd eat lunch on the bus on the way home, and we'd all fall asleep exhausted. That was awesome. And so now I live in Layton, 20 minutes to Snow Basin from my front porch. So That's where we ski now. I have 4 boys. One's married. They're all skiers. My oldest is a snowboarder. We call him the knuckle dragger in the family, and he works for Cardiff Snowcraft, and they manufacture snowboards and skis now. So he's huge into that, and it's awesome. And actually, it was my birthday yesterday, and we all took work and school off and went skiing as a family. So
That's great. Happy birthday.
thank you.
Wonderful. So thanks for that context. I'd like to have Iragi, one of our student ambassadors, ask the next question, which is really focused on our state's economy. So maybe, David, you'd like to kind of take the lead in answering it.
Sure.
So let's have her ask.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. How does the ski industry tourism contribute to the state's economy? And do you think Utah's investment as a good thing?
It's a great question. Taking the broad view overall, tourism is a huge economic driver in Utah and generates approximately $12 billion in traveler spending every year, and that translates into nearly $2.2 million in state and local tax revenue and 151,000 jobs. So then if you look at the ski portion of it, our office and Ski Utah, Raylene and I partner on a study with some other partners, and we ask people how much they spend when they come skiing. And skiers and snowboarders spent $2.6 billion here in 2021, 2022, and 1.94 billion of that is from out-of-state skiers. So it's just a huge economic driver and generates so much tax revenue that benefits all of us. So it's a great investment in the state, for sure.
Well, and Dave, we say that tourism in general eliminates or gives each person in Utah or each family in Utah a savings of about $1,200 in taxes every year. So we love those skiers to come and spend their money and then go home and do whatever they do the rest of the year. But yeah, they spend $374 per day when they're here. So lots of money being run through our cash registers, which is really nice.
Another thing is our office we partner with the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute here at the U, and they estimate that the ski industry accounts for about 25,800 jobs. So, it's a key employer as well.
Yeah, that's great. And I think later on in the panel, we'll kind of want a little more perspective on jobs, and particularly in the light of climate change, right, and what we're going to do about that. Meredith, maybe you'd like to kind of ask our next question about financial accessibility. And Caroline, if you have any thoughts about it, we could start with you.
Yeah. How financially accessible is skiing for Utahns, and what does the future hold?
Yeah, going back to the first thing we were talking about, I've been really fortunate in my career to be able to make a small business work and to make skiing my full-time job. So it is a big driver for the economy. But one of the worries that I see, especially with some of the effects of the pandemic, is this widening gap with inequality between people who can afford to take vacations and people who can't. And I do really think, as a ski community, to create resilience going forward, we need to do a lot more to invite people in who don't look like us, who might not have the same socioeconomic background, people from different racial backgrounds, indigenous people. And so that's definitely one of the challenges that I think is to make sure it's not just for the 1%. I do think there are things like the Icon Pass that have made skiing a bit more accessible and a bit more in reach, but the amount of time and some of the logistics and just, I think some of the barriers to getting into the sport are getting bigger. And that's something that worries me, because I really want to create a culture where women and people of all ages and people from different racial backgrounds and religious backgrounds, where everyone, and especially adaptive skiers, where we create a ski industry and a future that works for everybody and where everyone feels welcome and included, and to get rid of some of the elitism that can be problematic.
And Caroline, when you talk about the economics of skiing, there are many programs out there in Utah and other states, like the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade passport program, where for $89, children get 3 days at every Utah resort. So some resorts have 12 and under ski free, 6 and under ski free. So there are great ways for people to take advantage of those programs. The Icon Pass, the Epic Pass, I mean, you get 40-some resorts around the world that you can ski for what is less than what a season pass to one resort used to be just 3 or 4 years ago. So the key to being able to afford the sport is to buy early. You have to buy in the spring to get the great deals for the next season. So that's my little insider tip. Buy in the spring.
Yeah, and I'll just say something. My parents weren't downhill skiers, and the reason I became a downhill skier is Idaho had a similar program through their elementary schools there. It's kind of that early entry and like allowing kind of people that didn't grow up skiing to become skiers is really important.
Also, there's the whole aspect of the gear. And I mean, as a father of 4, I mean, it can seem daunting at first, but there's ski swaps and there's all kinds of deals out there. And once you get started with the first one, you can keep passing stuff down if they all want to do the same, if they all want to ski or if they all want to snowboard. But you can pass it all down, and you can find ways to make it manageable. For sure.
Well, I'm really happy that there are places around town like Lone Pine Gear Exchange and the Gear Room where you can take your used gear and then other people can buy it. I mean, that's what we're all about, right? Reduce, reuse, recycle.
Yes.
So not just throw them away, but yeah, let somebody else use them.
And going back to just the gear part of it, I have so much respect for parents who are managing not only their own equipment, but for children. Like that, for me, I have a hard enough time sometimes remembering my skins or my ski poles or getting to the resort and forgetting my boots. So I think one of the things that can really help that everyone can do, like if you're a skier or a snowboarder, or if you're a hiker, however you like to get outdoors, is to invite someone in and take someone and mentor them. And I think like in an informal way, I appreciate the programs that you are running with Ski Utah and through the state. And I think that on a one-to-one level, that there's a lot of things we can do in our own communities, finding people from a different background and inviting them in and mentoring them and being a person that they can ask about gear and you can help them build the kit, because there's just a lot of little things you need to remember. And even just the way you put your socks on and your long johns and not having the right socks can make a huge difference to how your day goes.
And only one pair.
Yes.
Only one pair, not 3 pairs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so just being someone who's warm, welcoming, invite someone in, take them skiing for a half day, take someone to the resort, and I think that that's something we all can do, and that can have a big impact.
Well, my wife and I were laughing yesterday that was kind of the payoff, is that all those years of trying to get all the gear on the kids and everything. I mean, it's fun, and it's awesome when they're starting to learn. I mean, it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to get them up there, and as soon as you get them all ready to go, then they gotta go to the bathroom or they gotta do something else. That's, and now we can all just go, and it's a great family activity together. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you all so much. It's really exciting to hear about some of these policies. I think we're all really curious about how the industry or our government is going to kind of adapt as we see the climate change even more. So Iragi is going to introduce a question about the economy, and then Otto, I know you have a lot of research on this, and hang on to it for the subsequent question. But if you have thoughts on the economy too, please let us know. But Iragi, go ahead.
Okay, how could this climate change threaten the ski workforce or the economy? And what is the ski industry or the state government doing to stop or respond to the climate change?
Well, I can start here. Certainly the ski resorts are all very aware of climate change and the potential downside it could be for them. I applaud them in their efforts of sustainability. They, for the most part, all have sustainability managers. And one of the really beautiful things about the Utah ski industry is we're very collaborative. Snowbird talks to Alta, Alta talks to Park City talks to Deer Valley, and we all work together. Many of the things that the resorts are doing are headed in the right direction. eliminating plastics at some resorts, doing educational programs for their visitors. Really, sustainable tourism is something that Dave and I both do in our organizations with our ad campaigns, for instance. But we're concerned for sure. You will also see resorts around the country going year-round. They're doing hiking and biking, and some are putting in water parks and all sorts of things that will make their resorts year-round so they aren't totally reliable on snowfall. Snowmaking equipment, that's expanded hugely over the past 20 years. So, you know, they're doing what they can, and they're definitely aware of it. And we work with people like Otto and Jim Steenberg here at the university and others to really do some long-range forecasting.
Do you want to add anything?
No, and I think it's just very important for, I think, what I see the ski industry being a vital, you know, contribution to our economy is maybe the ski resorts themselves kind of, you know, they depend on snow, right? And they maybe using that leverage to kind of influence policy. I don't know if they do that or not, but
yes,
it'd be kind of cool to see. Yeah.
I think they could be doing more along those lines. And I think I've been personally a little bit disappointed to see, watching this Utah legislative session, the lack of funding and resources going into helping our tourism economy. Because as a skier, I've been here for almost 25 years. And to see now how difficult it can be to go skiing, I would really love to see the state make more investments into like park and ride parking and a systemic transportation system to get people from all corners of the valley and from Park City to the canyons, and in a way that people can get to the mountains without using a car. That would be something I'd love to see. Something else I would love to see is just a little bit more investment into our park and ride amenities. I mean, I do a lot of backcountry skiing. So I leave my house in Park City, go to Little Cottonwood. Sometimes we have to stop and use the bathroom, and we still have these really pretty gnarly outhouses at the Little Cottonwood. That's the only public toilet. There's two that you can use. One is at the Little Cottonwood Canyon Park and Ride, and one is at the White Pine Trailhead, and they're both unheated. They are pit toilets. If you had small children, I would not want to put my small child on that toilet. Like, I would be terrified that they could fall in. And so things like having a heated space where families could wait to get, or where people can wait to get the bus at the Park and Ride at Little Cottonwood and Big Cottonwood, those investments would go a long way. They wouldn't cost the state very much, and I've been frankly very frustrated to not only see the state legislature's lack of funding and legislation for those, but then around the broader issue of climate change as well. Because the urgency that we have, the timeline to act on the climate crisis, I feel like the state legislature is very misguided, and they're not appreciating and recognizing and taking care of the industry that brings so much money and so much business to our state.
Yeah. One thing along those lines is, Dave, don't poke me for saying this, that sometimes we get in the rut of the tourism industry is doing so well that let's pull back the funding. They don't need funding. They're doing just fine without us. We learned a really big lesson during COVID. Utah was one of the few states, maybe the only state, that did not cut back its tourism funding during that time period. And we made leaps and bounds with our out-of-state visitors coming to the state during that COVID period because we didn't take our foot off the pedal. And we've seen other states pull back on their tourism funding, and it's taken them years to regain what they had before that. So if you know your legislator, write them, tell them to keep the tourism funding going strong, tell them to, you know, to do what they can about climate change, fund the Great Salt Lake, whatever. Fund all these things. Don't sit idly, because it's your generation that will benefit the most from what happens today at the legislature.
Well, and there are things we're trying to do in our office. The Office of Tourism is part of the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. So it's something that they've implemented is there's like 30,000 state employees when there's bad air days forecasted. They tell everybody who can work from home that day to work from home. And today is one of those days. There's like 3 of us in the office today. You know, so they do things like that just to try and get a bunch of cars off the road. On our website, when people look up, you know, how to do a ski vacation, we reference taking, you know, UTA and the Canyons Connect shuttle, and encourage carpooling and trying to get people up there on off-peak times. And so, you know, we're doing everything we can with the resources that we have.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, who's a skier or snowboarder in the audience? Okay, pretty good, yeah. Okay, we'll get the rest of you, don't worry.
Great, so with all this in mind, let's hear from our scientists. Let's hear from Otto. Could you tell us a little bit more about you know, your research related to dust in the Salt Lake and its impact on snowpack and snowmelt, and then also if you have thoughts on what we can do to prevent these things from getting worse, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. So, like I kind of alluded to earlier, our research we do here at the University of Utah, I work under Mackenzie Skiles. We have a lab group just upstairs here, concerns snow hydrology. So we're interested in studying snow in terms of how much water is in the snow and how quickly our snowpack melts, because that's really important for water management for basically everybody that lives downstream, as well as the kind of natural ecosystem. So kind of the focus of what we study is dust on snow or any sort of pollutants on the snowpack. And the reason we study that is because snow actually melts by absorbing sunlight. So if you've ever been out on like a bright sunny day, right, without sunglasses, kind of hurts your eyes, right? It's super bright. And that's because snow naturally is like this mirror, right? It reflects most sunlight and it just reflects it back out into the atmosphere. And it's absorbing very little. But as soon as you darken that snow surface, so if you get a big dust storm coming in, or if you get some sort of event that basically changes the color of the snow from this like pristine white color to, you know, kind of a dirty snow that you see if you've ever been to like a parking lot in a ski area, right? Those like snow banks are really dirty, right? As soon as we get that dirty snow, it's the same effect of having like kind of a dark shirt on a sunny day, right? It's going to get really, really hot really fast. So that snowpack's going to absorb way more sunlight, and it's going to melt a lot faster and earlier. And so we call that accelerated melt. And that's important because it basically shifts kind of when we get water downstream. And the way stream flow is forecasted currently is we don't actually account for the impacts of dust directly. And so what my research is doing, as well as kind of our lab research as a whole, is basically quantifying the impact of dust on snow locally here in the Wasatch Mountains. So we're talking about dust that comes from the lake bed of the Great Salt Lake, as well as the West Desert, and how is that actually shortening our snow season, and how does that influence water management and the ecosystem itself too.
What did you find? Did you get your numbers back from last season? Because I know you had the 22 numbers, but what were the 23 numbers?
I can tell you that so in 2022, just for some context, we had like basically the most dust we'd ever seen, at least since we like started recording dust measurements up at Alta, Utah, since like 2009 or so. And we actually did some modeling, and it shifted snowmelt by about almost 3 weeks. So all that snow in 2022 basically melted 3 weeks earlier compared to like if we had no dust deposition on the snow. So that's 3 weeks less of, you know, a white mountains in our backyard. 2023, we also had a lot of dust deposition, not quite as high as 2022, but pretty close, and still, you know, influencing the snowmelt pretty significantly, especially for such a big year.
Well, yeah, considering we had 903 inches last year, we should have been skiing into July and probably August, but it melted so quickly. And when that happens, it's not that great for the ground because it doesn't soak in, right? It sort of washes downstream, so.
Yeah, no, exactly. So dust is a big influence on snowmelt rate, in addition to basically the meteorology of your spring season. So the weather you get each spring, kind of the humidity, the temperature, all these factors are kind of interplaying with our snowmelt as well. Last year, there's also something else at play, is that the groundwater storage. So basically when snow melts, it runs off the surface, but it also goes into the soil and into the groundwater. And when that groundwater storage is kind of lower, right, it's going to absorb more of the water and less of it's going to run off. So that's kind of an additional factor into these stream flow forecasts that a lot of people at the U are working on as well. Paul Brooks over in the geology department does some of that work. So.
Can I just ask you one more question?
Yeah.
You said some of it comes from the West Desert, the dust, and some comes from the Great Salt Lake. Are there other sources you've been able to track?
Yeah, so here, the vast majority of the dust we get comes from the West Desert, actually. So the Great Salt Lake Desert is the official name, and it's basically, if you've ever driven west on I-80, kind of the whole big salt flats before you get to Wendover, that massive area is producing a ton of dust. In 2022, the Great Salt Lake lakebed, so the newly exposed area of the lakebed, contributed about a quarter of the dust we got, which is pretty significant, especially if you think about how big the West Desert is and how small the lakebed of the Great Salt Lake is in comparison, right? So this is an extremely efficient zone at producing dust, and it's also right next door to our mountain snowpack, so it can get there pretty quickly.
So if I could ask a question too, how did the wildfires that have been happening in the West and in Canada, how did that affect? Did that leave dust on the snow that impacted it negatively, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're kind of lucky in terms of the timing of the wildfires and the timing of when our snow melts, right? The reason why dust is so important is because it kind of coincides. We get like these dust storms really frequently right when snow is starting to melt, so in the spring season. This is also when the sun, in June, the sun's at its highest angle, so the snowpack has the ability to absorb the most radiation at that time. This is changing a little bit, but the wildfire season is generally later into the summer, right? Where most of our snow has already melted. And so therefore, we don't see as big of an impact from wildfires on melting here, but that's not to say that might not change into the future.
Okay.
Can I ask you one more?
I know, this is fascinating.
No,
right?
The research you guys are doing up here, you're just right upstairs.
Yes.
And the research you are doing is so fascinating. And my last question is just because skiing's awesome, we love skiing, but also the snowpack is our drinking water. So does the dust from the Great Salt Lake, the melt and the runoff, is that affecting our drinking water sources? Like the arsenic, the heavy metals?
Chemically,
yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Is the short answer.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of work being done on that front currently, but I don't have an answer.
Yeah, okay. I would love to hear more about that. Like, is the
Me too,
snow
yeah.
safe to eat?
Yeah.
Snow, 'cause
Yeah.
we love to
No,
eat
no.
snow. That's my nieces and nephews, that's their biggest
I know.
question,
Just don't let them eat it at the lift lines,
Yeah. I try to teach them,
Yeah.
eat this snow, not that snow. Safe snow to eat,
Yeah.
yes.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Otto. That was really informative. Mickey, could you ask our next question kind of about what do we do next?
Yeah, of course. So what opportunities and challenges do you guys see in the next decade with Salt Lake City being a good, likely to host 2034 Olympics? So do you think that economics, politics, and environmental stuff, what do you see in the next decade or so?
Well, it's a massive opportunity to host the Olympics. I started with the Office of Tourism about a year and a half after the 2002 Olympics. And it really put Utah on the map. And you see we get other big events like the NBA All-Star Game that we just had last year. It helps with our reputation as a great place where people can come and visit and have an enjoyable time. And, we've proven, I think Utah and Salt Lake has proven many times that we can host big events, but it just reminds people. There was research a year and a half after we hosted the Olympics. There was research that showed if we didn't remind people we had the Olympics, a lot of people forgot that we had them. That short of a time, and as soon as we prompted them and reminded them, they're like, "Oh yeah, it looked amazing. It was beautiful. Everybody was having a great time." But they needed that prompting. So to what Caroline was saying, we still need the resources and the funding to continue to remind people. It's also huge, the the whole state, there was a lot of infrastructure projects leading up to the Olympics. I mentioned that our family skis at Snow Basin a lot. Snow Basin was a totally different resort once they got it ready for the Olympics than before the Olympics. And our freeways were much better. And there's so many things, the light rail and tracks, and there's so many things improved getting ready for the Olympics. And I would imagine that we could continue to see improvements in our infrastructure. It's huge for our reputation. But then it's getting ready for it, And Natalie Gottner, who's with Kim Gardner Policy Institute, mentioned just the other week of the air quality. And if we're going to have the whole world come here and we're going to have an inversion day where it's hard to see across the street, that's terrible. So we need to continue to try to improve things like that.
Another nice thing about the opportunities that come with hosting the Olympic Winter Games is, like you said, the infrastructure, not just the roads and the tracks and all of that, but I don't know if any of you have been out to the speed skating oval. I don't know that anybody in Utah, maybe a few people, probably a few people, had ever heard of curling before the Olympics. And now there are many curling clubs and lots of people out there curling every day. Speed skating, we have the fastest ice on earth here. We didn't really follow speed skating much before the Olympics. We're not a hockey city per se. Now we are, and we're looking at getting an NHL team here. So all of that was because of the Olympics and the notoriety of Utah. And again, going back to research, we saw our international numbers grow considerably after the games. Domestically, people sort of knew about Utah, but internationally, they barely knew about Utah after the games because they follow the Olympic Winter Games much more than Americans do. The interest in Utah was extremely high after we hosted the games. And we still, in our marketing, we don't do ads that say we hosted the games, but when we do presentations to, especially internationally, to tour operators, and we go to ski shows and things, we still promote the fact that we hosted the 2002 Olympic Winter Games because that's a big deal internationally.
Well, and we just hosted a delegation from the south of France region, and they're in the same position we are for the 2034 games. They are for the 2030 games. So they're hoping to host the Winter Olympics in 2030. They came here, they met with the folks at Utah Olympic Park, met with the governor and all kinds of different people. They also went down to Arches and looked at our national parks. They have 4 national parks in their region. We have 5. I mean, there are a lot of similarities, and they're dealing with seasonality and crowding and all these things. So we were comparing notes, and they showed a video. I mean, it's the south of France. They got the beach, they got the French Alps. I mean, it was incredible. But they were looking at our scenery and just as blown away. And I just sat there thinking, we're on par. We're on par with these guys, and I think sometimes we sell ourselves short. But the Olympics puts us right up there, and so it's going to be amazing.
And if any of you have an opportunity this weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, to go up to Deer Valley and watch the World Cup freestyle events, the aerials, the moguls, the dual moguls, it's free to the public. It is an amazing experience. And when they hosted those events during the 2002 games, it was the first time those events had been done at night. And now it's done at night every year. And it is an amazing opportunity and experience that we have here in Utah. So go up and view it. You'll have such a great time.
To add to that, there's no doubt that Utah is a world-class destination. We have the best snow, great access. However, and the Olympics are a great opportunity, but that's 10 years away. And we have a really short amount of time to take action on the climate crisis if we want to avoid the worst case scenarios. Additionally, I don't think that we can wait 10 years to make improvements in our air quality and our public transportation infrastructure. We don't want to wait till it's like the in-laws are coming over, we've got to clean up the house. We should be doing this for us and for Utahns to have an improved quality of life, because the air quality is a public health crisis. The drying of the Great Salt Lake is a public health crisis. If the Olympics can help bring funding to address those issues, to address the lack of systemic public transportation, then that's great. But we can't wait 10 years because we know the science shows we only have a small window to reduce carbon emissions to avoid these devastating consequences. And I've read studies that say that by the year 2100, Park City will lose all of its snowpack. Right now it's 40, today the high in Park City is gonna be 47 degrees. Our snowpack is melting. We're seeing a lot more rain on snow. But what really worries me is just the health effects of people that are breathing carbon emissions, but breathing the pollution and what that does for miscarriages, for asthma, for cancer. It's taking years off of our life. And we have the solutions. We need the political will. I'm extremely frustrated by our state leaders and some of the recent legislation that they've enacted, like the bill they passed last year that it increases the tax on EV charging while decreasing the gasoline tax. We're continuing to incentivize people to drive gas guzzlers while penalizing people who are driving cleaner cars. And meanwhile, we're not giving them the tools to get around without a car. So to me, I'm just frustrated, and I think we need to keep putting pressure on our elected officials to do more. We need to vote the ones out who aren't doing enough. I really hope that the Utah Supreme Court addresses the gerrymandering problem so we can actually vote in elected officials who represent our communities, because right now the way the districts are drawn, it's really hard for us to elect people who represent our communities and our interests. And so we have to really put the pressure on because we only have a short window of time to take action.
That's true, but you know what? It all starts with us. How many of us drove here today? Instead of walking or taking a bike or tracks or a bus? How many of us drive 3 blocks to church or 5 blocks to the grocery store? We are all guilty of contributing to the problem. And so it's not just reaching out to your legislators, it's looking to what I'm doing, what you are doing. We're all in this together. So yeah, it starts with us.
Yeah, I'll add to that a little bit. I mean, I think, living by principle is really important for kind of facing climate change. But when it comes to certain issues, I think the Great Salt Lake is a great example of this, right? If the Olympics are coming in 2034, right, we don't want the whole world to show up and ask where the Great Salt Lake is, we want it to still be there. We don't want people skiing, like dirty, slushy snow in the middle of February, right? And these issues, like, they're better addressed, or they can be more efficiently addressed at the policy level. And so voting and pushing for policy that preserves the Great Salt Lake, puts water back into the lake, and addresses climate change is, I think, extremely important, in addition to living by principle.
Well, and I just heard this morning that they're looking at ways can we take water from Utah Lake, which is 98% full, can we channel that up to the Great Salt Lake, which is 60% full or something, and that would eliminate flooding in Utah County if there were big rainstorms in Utah County, because Utah Lake would overflow. Can we channel that water up to the Great Salt Lake? So I know there are people out there looking and thinking and trying to figure this out. Some of it comes down to thinking, some of it comes down to funding. Mm-hmm. So we're not I don't think we're sitting around hoping God takes care of everything, because that's probably not going to happen. So
great. Wonderful. Thank you so much for those answers. Our last question, I think you've already addressed. We were going to kind of wrap up with asking what everyday Utahns can do to protect our ski industry and our climate. But I think we've hit on a lot of this, right? So with that, I would invite the audience to maybe ask a few questions of their own. Maybe I will call on individuals as you raise your hand. And Meredith, could you bring them the microphone? Thank you. Let's start over here.
I guess I've been itching to ask this one. So obviously, there's somewhat of an equity problem with the skiing industry. Increasing prices, talents are starting to be very gentrified. We're kind of building this ski community. like in what ways can we try to make skiing realistically more accessible for Utah residents? Because I mean, now as a college student, like I have to work a job just to pay for like a $900 pass, which I mean, working, I can't get up every day, so. But that's definitely something that was on my mind, is just how do we make it more accessible for Utahns? Because I mean, not all of us can spend $374 a day to go skiing.
Well,
So
you
it's
wouldn't because you're not coming from out of state.
yeah, yeah.
You're not
No,
staying
yeah,
in a
I'm not
hotel.
saying that, but yeah, just
So as a student, many of the resorts offer student passes, student discounts. Again, buying them in the spring is easy or is best. You can take public transportation. You can buy used equipment. But it's never going to be free. So we have to make sacrifices if we want to ski, if that's a lifestyle that we choose. It's not going to be free. How can we make it as economical as possible? And that's by researching the passes that are available and then taking advantage of those. Again, an Icon Pass gives you 40-some resorts around the world, so you're not married to one resort. The student passes are another thing. One thing that Ski Utah is doing with diversity and equity is and inclusion is we have a Discover Winter program where you can apply and we break down all the barriers. We give you jacket, pants, gloves, neck gaiters, socks. We give you transportation to the resort. We give you 4 lessons. We give you a Yeti pass after so you can keep skiing the rest of the season. We do what we can to help break down those barriers, but it will never be free. So you have to make that choice. Is this something I want to do? Then what can I cut out of my budget that will make it happen? But be sure and check the prices in another month because you'll save a lot of money.
It's a really good question. And I remember when I was a college student here, I would do every random job. Like I worked at a gear shop so I could get the discounts on the stuff and then to get the passes through the gear shop. And I worked, while being a full-time student, all these different odd jobs. Like I was a ski nanny, I was a ski coach. Like I tried to do everything I could to make it work. And at that time, I think one of the things that made the dream a little more attainable for me and something that's changed for you all is the price of housing. And I think that's definitely something that we need to address is just how much more it costs to pay your rent now and how many more hours you need, and wages haven't kept up with that. And so, and this is a big problem we see in trying to get seasonal workers to stay in Park City as well, is the housing shortage. So I don't know, I'm learning, looking into the solutions. We definitely need to build a lot more housing to keep up with how many more people are here, and there needs to be more done to address just how much it costs now to house yourself. And I think I want to see a future where people can move here and make their dream of becoming a ski bum a reality. Like that was always my biggest dream as a kid. And I'm really lucky I was able to make that a reality and to save enough to put a down payment on a house and to buy a little starter home. But I worry that that now is out of reach. And I think that that's another component to making the ski dream, the ski bum dream a reality for your generation and future generations.
Thank you so much. I think we'd have another question. If you don't mind passing the mic just 2 seats down here. Oh, you don't want it? Okay, then we'll go to the front.
What percent of Utah's
That's a good question.
were eligible? And if you were to pay a deposit of that percentage, what would it?
So if you ask me that question in another month, I can give you that answer. We've been trying to figure that out for years. We now are doing a local audience research study to find out. The last time we did it was about 25 years ago, and at that point it was extremely low. It was like 8% of Utahns and 11% of those who live along the Wasatch Front and back. I would dare say it's going to be higher now because we've had a lot of people move in and who enjoy our skiing and snowboarding. So in another month, give me a call and I'll be able to give you that answer. Pardon me? So again, I don't know that until we finish this research project. But last time we did it, I mean, I can't even give you those numbers because it's so old. So I really would like to wait until the end of that research. But if you'll give me your name and number or email address, I'll be happy to send it to you.
Awesome, thank you. So we have a question in the front. So maybe you could bring the mic over here.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
quick question.
From YouTube? Yeah, so I'll just pause. So this is why we're passing the mic around, because we are streaming. So there's folks who want to be able to hear the questions online. So thanks, Gabby. Go ahead.
What are the benefits and side effects of artificial snow, and can we lean on it long term?
That's a great question.
So
So I'm not an expert in artificial snowmaking, but I can say in the face of climate change, right, we're going to be expecting warmer temperatures. And I think artificial snowmaking will give us some, basically, I see it as a short-term solution to kind of a more longer-term pressing issue that we're facing. Snowmaking is great, and that allows us to have basically more snow. It allows us to keep our ski areas open. But if temperatures continue to get warmer and warmer, maybe in 50 years and 100 years, right, we're going to start kind of going over the threshold where we can even make snow too. So that's important to kind of keep in your back of your mind. These innovation solutions are really critical at kind of adapting and facing the challenges associated with climate change, but we at the same time need to be addressing the fundamental root cause of the issue.
thank you for that question from our viewer. Okay, great. Yeah, maybe here.
So I work at a Title I school, and the families that I serve have no expectation or hope in the state legislature to support them whether money comes into the state or not. And I'm from Moab, which I hate the tourism industry down there because my family can't afford to live there anymore. So, while income to the state of Utah and overall notoriety would certainly increase, what effects would the Olympics or other growth, hockey or MLB, have directly on the life of Utahns, positive or negative?
Great question. David, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's all economic development. It generates more tax revenue that can go to fund more programs in the state. Moab's an interesting situation because housing is an issue there, and housing is an issue at pretty much any resort town in the West. We meet with other state tourism offices once a year, and it comes up every year. It's an issue that everybody's dealing with and trying to find solutions to. At the same time, without tourism, what would Moab's economy be? There might not be a Moab right now. I mean, so it's a difficult question. I think MLB and NHL and NBA, that all it adds to the quality of life here. I'm excited for. I know I'm not really a huge baseball fan. I've gone to a few major league games, but I'm excited for MLB. I hope it comes so bad because it's more affordable. And it's, they have so many games and people can go to a game without, breaking their budget to do that. So it adds to the quality of life and just adds to the offerings here. And it will generate more money. And then the hope is that there'll be more economic development around the stadiums and arenas. So, time will tell.
The one thing we have to remember too is the national parks, the ski resorts, most of the ski resorts, almost all of them, all of the national parks, they're federal land. They're not Utah. They're not Utahns' land. We have to share them. We have to share them responsibly, but we can't keep them for ourselves. And like Dave said, Moab wouldn't be Moab today if there wouldn't have been tourism promotion back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. So, we just have to be responsible in the way we promote and what we promote and how we teach people to travel responsibly.
It's a really important policy question. Thank you for asking it. We have about 5 minutes left, so maybe a couple more questions. You've had your hand up for a while, so we'll go next. And then I see your hand over there, so you can go next.
I had a question concerning cost, because doing the math straight off of my head, it's going to cost like at least $2,000 a year to even ski in general, taking into account actually paying for the pass, transportation, accommodating for that transportation, paying for parking, paying for clothing, paying for skis. That's rent. Like that's like getting a studio apartment in Salt Lake is like $1,200 a month. So like for me, working 40 hours a week and six classes in college, I don't have the time or the resources to even consider it. And I've seen that with a lot of my buddies because work is a priority. You don't like, I understand that it's a sacrifice to pay that money, but that goes to expenses, that goes to rent, that goes to emergency funds if you get in an accident. So like, what can the Utah government or like actual resorts do to make it equitable for people and actually financially possible for someone to do that and take time off of work to even go ski in general?
Caroline, you seem to have a lot of interesting policy answers. You want to take a stab at this one?
I mean, it's a really difficult question, and I just want to say that I hear you, and I acknowledge that that's a reality that so many people are facing now, and I find it really sad because, like, I think whether it's skiing or just being able to get out on the trail, that for me, what I know in my life is that access to the outdoors, being in nature, it's vital to my well-being as a human. So I don't have the answer. I wish I did. I hear what you're saying, and I'll see what I can do to keep thinking about that and working on it because I struggled a lot as a young person with depression and anxiety, and like skiing is one of those places where I felt I could just be this better version of myself, and I could be a little feral, a little wild, and like reconnect with that, like, just to feel like you're a part of nature, to feel this greater presence. It was very healing. It continues to be very healing for me. I go because it's vital to my mental health and my physical health, and so I think that I'd love to see along the Wasatch Front more access to trails, more ways that you can get outside and get into nature that doesn't necessarily, I know it's hard sometimes to get up to the canyons, and especially on a Saturday. It can feel so overwhelming. And so like I'm really lucky I was able to move up to Park City 7 years ago, and we have over 600 miles of trails that were built into the urban development. So even the gated communities, they still have easements for the public trails to go through, and having those backyard trails for me when I don't have the time to go skiing because I have to work, having just that little hit of the outdoors, of nature, that really fills my cup, and it gives me a lot of resilience because I know that it can be a grind for sure. Being a college student, working multiple jobs, like it's hard. So I just want to say I acknowledge that, and I would love to work to bring more trail systems so that everyone can have that connection to the outdoors, especially with the beautiful Wasatch Mountains that we have. And the Oakers too, like the Oakers have some really cool. I was able to go out there from the backside and do a really cool peak out there. And so I think there needs to be more investment into trail development along the Wasatch Front and to like just walking corridors because well, I do agree with you, Raylene, what you said, that we have to take personal responsibility as well. It's hard to bike when there's not a bike lane, when the roads aren't safe, when there's not good sidewalks. And so just to make sure our communities that we're investing in green spaces, that we're investing in parks, so that wherever you live in the Wasatch Front, there's a place where you can have that connection to nature.
And I just have to say one thing about this. So skiing can be expensive, everything can be. I spend $2,200 a year on Pilates. It's 1 hour a day, 1 hour. Skiing is 6 hours for a day. So, you have to pick your battles, pick your how many times do you go out to lunch a day or a week? How many times do maybe you take that money and put it in a jar and say, I'm not gonna go out to lunch this week. That's my ski jar. So just little things like that can add up.
With our last 2 minutes, I'd like to have this final question over here.
First, there are 3 private ski resorts in Utah. They're not all on federal land. Deer Valley is a good example. I'd like the audience to think of how would you spend $1.4 billion? Would it lower your tuition? Would it pay teachers better salary? And I'd like to know how the panelists feel about the gondola, which will be the longest in the world, 8.5 miles, and it will ruin, in my judgment, one of the most scenic canyons that we have in the entire state. But I value your personal opinion.
A difficult question to answer in like 30
Well,
seconds,
yeah.
but if anyone wants to take a stab at that, please go ahead.
Well, I can just say that definitely something needs to happen to eliminate the congestion in the canyons. The gondola is one alternative. It would not be the only alternative. There is still lots of room for discussion on carpooling lanes, bus lanes, additional buses, et cetera. Something needs to be done, and we can't keep putting it off. Because right now, if the gondola was successful in saying, the county said, we're absolutely going forward with this, it wouldn't happen for years. It's not going to be next year or the year after. So, we have to be aware of what can we do in that meantime and what are the other alternatives, but something definitely needs to be done for sure.
I'd be happy to jump in. I think that a cool vision would be to take the gravel pit right now, which is a really natural place, to make that into like a huge park and ride with like donut shops and a taco cart and like a place where the ski community and the outdoor community could gather, could park, and to make that into a really nice, and then to have that be sort of a transportation hub to get people to the different canyons, because with electric buses would be awesome. I mean, we're using them in Park City, and it's very cold there, very snowy, and they're working really well up there. So I'd love to see some other alternatives that provide more of a systemic transportation solution, and to address the congestion in Big Cottonwood and Parley's and Mill Creek as well, and to get people from all corners of the valley to the mountains without having to drive a car.
Great. Well, I think that's about time for us. So we can maybe give a warm thank you to our panelists and to the economics ambassadors for planning this, and the Hinckley Institute for hosting. Thank you again, and we'll see you soon.